Hey everybody, how you doing today? Beautiful, beautiful day today here in the graveyard. Walking my little guy. Hey Milo, say hello. Yeah, you're such a good boy. Such a good boy. He gets a little freaked out outside all the time. You see him looking around. He's always just like looking for danger, looking for something that's gonna come and sideswipe him. Poor little guy. Spent a lot of his early years kind of getting picked on and pushed around. Makes him hyper alert and hyper aware all the time. Uh, I see a lot of myself in him sometimes, honestly. That if you get pushed around too much, if you get picked on too much, you get really hyper aware and you get really looking for danger around every corner. What's banging around my head today, this afternoon? In this beautiful, beautiful graveyard today. I do feel absolutely blessed to be a citizen of Canada at the moment. It does look like our elected officials, even the ones like Doug Ford, are doing everything they can to sort of alleviate pressure, given the crisis that we're all experiencing. They're making it easier for workers. They're making it easier for people to sort of come down from this and feel less pressure about the whole thing. So I feel very blessed, especially when I look at American news and I see what's going on in America. Oh, here's my guy, letting everybody know he's there. Milo, come on, buddy. Come on. You don't need to worry about it. I know there's another dog here. I know. Come on, buddy. Here's a good boy. Let's go. What a good boy you are. Let's go, buddy. Thank you, buddy. My guy doesn't really understand what I'm doing home so much now. I'm not home this much. So he's very, skeptical. I think he's activating his sort of protectron circuitry that I need to be protected. It's very cute, but kind of getting over it. Wish he'd just kind of go with the flow a little bit more. But I look down into the States and I see the kind of catastrophe that's unfolding down there. If I was an American citizen, I would be very, very afraid. I'd be very scared of what's going on and the uncertainty that's being bred and the uncertainty that is happening. Like, there are these weird moments where, like, the Republican Party, which is sort of renowned as, a far right party, is suddenly trying to pass policies to the left of the Democrats, who seem to be trying really hard to make sure that the aid that needs to get to people will not. And I think it's because people understand what needs to happen, right? Like, our politicians do. The Liberals are passing a basic income. They're passing legislation to ease tension amongst the populace and ease tension amongst sort of all of the different classes of people that exist. Whereas in the States, there's just no such... The talk is there, but the action isn't. And it's not going to take too much longer before people are put in a real bind because of the inaction of their leadership. And that bind, there is going to come a moment when people are going to have to become more direct with their leadership as their leaders sort of once again act in this kind of hesitant, uncertain kind of a way. And of course, if you're completely owned by the corporate class, right, the way the Democratic Party is, if you're completely in the thrall of corporate power, you understand very well, like, yeah, if we passed a basic income, it would ameliorate a lot of problems for people. But once you pass that kind of legislation, it becomes very difficult to take it back, which is what I'm convinced what the Liberals are sort of setting us up for. They're sort of setting us up for like, oh no, that was an emergency fund. Forgetting, of course, that normal is an emergency for millions of people, and we are still in a climate emergency. So something like a basic income would go a long way to helping ease through that kind of tumultuous period of time. Worth pointing out, by the way, interesting how we can like restructure our society at a moment's notice. Like for years and years and years now, when I'm talking about climate change, talking about global warming, talking about how we need to restructure our society, we need to change things, get off fossil fuel, make bigger decisions faster. Suddenly in comes the COVID virus. And I was told the whole time, like, no, these things take time and it's a slow process. And then in comes the COVID virus and, oh, it seems like we can restructure our society very quickly. Seems like we can pass legislation very quickly. It seems like we can do these things very quickly. And we can do things that we should have been doing all along. You know, we can pass a basic income. Oh, okay. I thought it needed to be tested a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th time. You know, like, oh, it turns out we knew all along that it worked, and it's a system that functions. Oh, because, oh, it's exactly like the child benefit? Oh, it's exactly like the old age pension? Oh, okay. Like, we know it works. And that's why they're passing it, because it works. But down in the States, they'll bandy about the idea, but when it comes time to actually pass legislation, people are standing up and actually saying we need to have means testing during this moment. Like, are you kidding me? Like, are you actually kidding me? Like, imagine you're in the middle of this, like, imagine you're in a house fire, right? But in the midst of the house fire, you need to pause, fill out some paperwork, wait for a bureaucrat to go over it, see if, oh, okay, do we actually need to do anything? Are you in need? Well, meanwhile, your house is on fire. This is essentially what's happening in the States, and it makes me very thankful that we have in place right now federal leadership, especially, that seems to respect and understand that, you know, there are multiple classes and multiple layers to this problem. It's not just give money to businesses and then things will move along from there. Because businesses have shown time and time again their total willingness to take a government bailout and then lay off people and give bonuses to the CEOs. We've seen that repeatedly, over and over again. When what we should be doing is, instead of bailing out these businesses that are failing, we should be nationalizing them if they're important. And if they're not important, they should go away. Honestly, like, I don't understand this sort of mania for business, this sort of manic desire to keep an institution or a structure alive, based on what? Like, the fact that it can make profits for itself? Like, that seems to be the only litmus test. And it's like, well, are we not going to have any kind of grander conversation about whether or not these things are even useful to do? Is it a great idea to have a 24/7 McDonald's beside a school? Like, is that such a great idea? Is it a great idea to have these kinds of constant opening and shuttering of businesses? And most importantly, is it the best thing that we can do to tie the safety and security of our society to institutions that are extremely fragile? And businesses are extremely fragile. They're not stable. right? You can shut your business down simply if the populace decides, we're not going to participate in that kind of activity anymore. Like, it really is sort of like on the whims. And I'm well aware of how the whims of the market can shift. I work at a toy store, right? And in the toy store, you're tying, the product that you get in is tied directly to the whims of 5-year-olds. Like, we sell products that I look at and I'm like, yeah, okay, it's kind of cool, but like, I'm staking my livelihood to whether or not a 5-year-old thinks that this thing is cool. Like, that's, while I'm happy to sell toys to children, while I'm happy to work in that field, while I'm happy to do all of that, it is kind of like a little moment of clarity where you're like, oh, like, this institution exists explicitly to provide a non-essential service that should the wind blow in a different direction for one moment, I could be out of a job. And this COVID-19 crisis is really kind of evidence of that if the wind blows in one direction, it doesn't take very long, and suddenly thousands and thousands of people are out of work. And we need to build our society that has more structural strength than this. We need to build a society that's based more on solidarity, less on this idea that everyone should just go work for some business that fills the whims of the people who can afford to pay, which seems to collapse at the moment there's even a modest amount of stress applied to it. I just feel like we're in a real cultural moment right now. We're in this real moment of rest, a real moment where we can look at the society around us, where we can ask sort of larger questions, where we can take more seriously suggestions that have come from the left spectrum, where we can take more seriously ideas that root our economy in our communities and in our societies, instead of selling it to sort of foreign stockholders who couldn't even find the places they own on a map. To me, that's the real failing of the system that we're currently under, is that we tie our well-being to people who don't even live in the communities. We tie the well-being of our communities and of ourselves to these people who they might not even know that they have ownership of your business. You're just part of their stock portfolio. You know, you're just something that people have picked up along the way, and they don't even necessarily care that much. And if the line goes down, if the stock begins to drop, they'll just sell that stock to someone else, right? For them, it's just like a casino. It's just like a gambling house. And I just think that we can build our society to be better, you know? I think that it's not going to, and it's showing itself not to be difficult. It's showing itself to be quite simple, except that it's made difficult. Like here in Canada, it seems like it's just kind of going along tickety-boo, you know? It seems like it's kind of just clipping along, and everybody's kind of agreed that, like, of course. Like, it's like we've all come up up to a car that's stuck in the snow and it's trying to get out of the snow. And every Canadian I've ever met, when they come up to a fellow who's got himself stuck in the snow, right? They're gonna walk up to that vehicle and they're gonna put some weight on it and they're gonna get that car out of the snow, right? That's a fairly regular occurrence for me, you know, here in Canada. And when I walk up to the person who's stuck in the snow, I don't think to myself, well, do they deserve my help? Do they, should they fill out a form first? Maybe they should apply, and then we can really look at the situation. I don't say insipid things like, well, they shouldn't have gotten stuck in the snow, you know? Yeah, they should have looked out for themselves. Like, it's an inevitability, guys. Like, it's an inevitability that someone will get stuck in the snow. And sit. Good boy, stay. Got a car driving by here, so. Car. Good old, speaking of Canadian tropes. Good boy, buddy, come on. And once, and you just put your weight into it and you just get them out and you realize it took no time whatsoever and it helped them. But if you, and that's one thing I think we have to be talking about all the time is the inevitability, right? The inevitability of someone getting their vehicle stuck in the snow, right? Like, that's inevitable. It's not, it has nothing to do with their personal driving skill or their personal desire or this, that, and the other thing, right? People get stuck in the snow because snow is there and their car is there. And I've known excellent drivers, people who have been driving their whole life and they get caught in the snow. You know, you don't even need to misgauge it, right? Sometimes things just happen. Sometimes you like pull over to the side of the road because something is happening or you need to deal with, right? And a piece of the road that you thought was safe, well, it actually it wasn't. The gravel is actually broken away there and the snow is just a facade, right? And so the tire gets stuck in the snow and then you can't get your car out, no matter how hard you try. And that's inevitable. And that inevitability exists in our society as well. Because once you have a system that's so large, right? It's the scale of this system where you can't really be keeping tabs on every single individual all the time. People, the line that is said is that people fall through the cracks. Well, and that's an inevitability. The way we discuss this is so weird and funny to me. Like we say that if people fall through the cracks, and so we should build a net so that they fall into this net, this safety net. And yet every system that I've seen or experienced here in Canada, as you're falling through those cracks, you better stop and fill out some paperwork first. And so there's this understanding that there's an inevitability. There's this understanding that it's inevitable, that life is larger than we are as individuals, that the natural systems that we exist in are larger than we are, but we can't seem to understand that because of that, we need to create automatic systems that automatically say to the people around them, oh, you've fallen, as is the inevitable thing. So we're going to make it so that you fall into a pillow or fall onto a bed instead of falling into, broken glass and rubble and whatever else we've discarded along with you. And so we can do it. Like, we can do it. This crisis is revealing that we can do it. And if this crisis is revealing that we can do more and that we can do better for our society, it should also be revealing that we can do better for many other issues. That it shouldn't require a crisis to move on issues that are desperately important for the people and for the society. We shouldn't wait. We shouldn't sit around waiting for another COVID virus to show up before we do something more meaningful about climate change, for example. Although in many ways I do hope that the passing of this basic income legislation will allow release of tension among for those people who are most affected by the transition away from fossil fuels. I think my largest critique about the federal Liberals is that they aren't actually directly addressing the needs of those people. There is really only one reason why the Conservative Party exists federally at all, right? I mean, when you look at them, they're intellectually vapid. They really don't have solutions. They really don't have ideas. And so you really start asking yourself, like, how is this party even a thing? Like, how does it actually exist? How is it actually getting support from the people? And the only reason it's getting any support from the people is because the Liberals are not addressing the needs of Albertans. Albertans being the ones who are most affected by the transition away from fossil fuels. And so now here's a moment where we can pass an emergency piece of legislation. And it is a bit fortunate because it can be passed without much by way of politicization. It's very difficult for someone to stand up and say, no, we shouldn't do this desperately necessary measure during a period of crisis. But it also has the side effect of actually directly addressing the crisis that was already existing for many Albertans. And getting money into those people's bank accounts is something we should have been doing for years and years. We should have already been doing this for those people in Alberta, right? Those people who are losing their jobs, those people who are being told, oh, well. And then I think back, like, Canada has experienced similar things. There was a fishery crisis on the East Coast. All of these poor people on the East Coast sort of put into a forced migration because they have to move away from home. They have to go work on the oil rigs in the tar sands and all of this because it's the only work in Canada that's good for them, right? I spent a year on the East Coast. Everybody knew someone who left. Everybody knew someone. And everyone had a story like that. And these people could have used a basic income. They could have been told, like, okay, the businesses have dried up. We're not going to base our society on the whims of business and on the whims of the business class. We're going to say to our citizens, well done, good job. We're going to support and take care of you. And we're not going to support a system that's going to blow your life up. That's going to say to your families, okay, we're going to split you up. And I'll be curious to see how the opinions of Albertans and the opinions of the prairies change, or if they do change in regards to the federal Liberals as this legislation goes through, as these measures are enacted, as the stress that people were already experiencing before the virus actually does receive some kind of amelioration, some kind of benefit. Something good comes their way. And my hope really is that it will mean sort of the end of the Conservative Party, because it will be revealed and shown that they're a party with no ideas, that they don't actually have any solutions to this situation. And the more I do dwell on it, the more I really do think that the Liberals had all of this ready to go. I take a look at kind of the streamlined sort of ease by which they are moving forward. And sure, there's work to be done, I'm sure of it. But I look down in the States at the level of confusion, the level of uncertainty, and it really does make me think, like, these Liberals, they had these ideas, they were listening, they were planning, and they are seeing this opportunity, and they're taking it. So, God bless Canada. All right, guys. This is day 5 of my self-isolation. I hope it's going well for you. Have fun. Love the people you love.